Hey, this is Greg Getter. Today I have 2 lessons on brand building from Ralph Lauren, the mind behind one of the most successful clothing and lifestyle brands in the US. His name is instantly recognizable, but not too many people know the Ralph Lauren backstory. The first lesson today comes from how Ralph willed his eponymous brand into existence. To give you context, Ralph was born in the Bronx in New York City to a relatively poor immigrant family. His dream was to become a millionaire and live the associated millionaire lifestyle. Throughout his early life, he was known for dressing in his own unique style, whether it was wearing colorful preppy crewneck sweaters or wearing wide ties in a time when skinny ties were in fashion. Ralph's lack of funds meant he was scrappy. His original line of neckties was often made of old but high quality and beautiful fabrics, and this struck a nerve with his first clients. In other words, Ralph's unique personal style, creative resourcefulness, and knowledge of classic menswear became the foundation for Polo and his later brands. Now, Ralph is a reserved person, not one to be found in the spotlight. But his personality is bold, it's just reflected in the quality and style of the products he creates. Anyone who's worked with him would tell you about his obsessive attention to detail and demand for perfection. It was never about media attention, it was always about the product. In other words, Ralph's taste and lifestyle aspirations are the brand. The brand would be nothing without Ralph. Ralph is the brand. I can think of a couple other brands that have the founder's DNA so deeply embedded into everything they do. James Dyson is obsessed with engineering and thinking outside the box. Every Dyson product and marketing piece is an opportunity to display engineering wizardry, even though you could argue almost every one of their products are over-engineered in some way or another. Steve Jobs saw a future where computers were beautiful. His vision was all over Apple products, whether it was the computers or the iPod or the iPhone, even if that meant sacrificing ports and drives when users were not yet ready. The market would eventually come around to Steve's vision. And the engineers behind Toyota were so committed to making constant, continuous improvements that they invented a completely new manufacturing model, minimizing waste and outdated inventory. Toyota is recognized the world over for creating the highest quality vehicles, even if they have been late to the game on fully electric vehicles. In all these examples, the companies would probably not be anywhere without the personality, the ego of the founders. The second lesson from Ralph Lauren is about protecting and growing your brand. When Ralph started out on his own, his first product was a line of colorful, wide neckties. He got his ties into a handful of high-end New York retailers, such as Paul Stewart. Even though those stores were low on volume, Ralph could then go on to larger retailers with his credibility established from the small but high-end retailers. When Ralph got into negotiations with a department store, Bloomingdale's, they offered to sell his ties under the condition that he removed his brand and sold them under the Bloomingdale's house brand instead. Ralph refused. It was a time where he could have desperately used the cash and the credibility boost of working with Bloomingdale's, but he instead insisted on having his own brand, and he told an associate that they would eventually come around to his wishes. And come around they did. Ralph launched his Polo line of neckties in Bloomingdale's in 1967, and he followed with a full menswear collection the following year. But Ralph kept dreaming bigger. He didn't have the money to advertise, so instead he came up with the idea to open a dedicated shop within Bloomingdale's. Ralph was selling an image of an ideal lifestyle, and if he couldn't control all the aspects of the experience, it would sacrifice the success of his brand. Bloomingdale's at first turned him down, but Ralph countered that if they didn't build him a shop, he would just go somewhere else, even though he had an existing relationship with them. His aspirations were so much higher. Frank Simon at Bloomingdale's, who originally had rejected the idea, said later of Ralph, "That's Ralph. He's a good, cool negotiator, and he's consistent. He doesn't come in with one idea one day and another idea the next. He had the dream, but he wasn't big enough yet to do that himself." The first store within a store dedicated to a single designer opened in Bloomingdale's in 1970, with Ralph defining all aspects of the experience, right down to the wooden wall paneling. And Ralph kept executing on the idea of a full retail experience, opening independent retail stores as his funds allowed, slowly building out his full empire. And none of this would have happened if he had white labeled his unique neckties to Bloomingdale's. The most likely thing that would have happened is a few years of sales, then nothing else. This story is similar to Sony, whose founders were approached by the popular US watch company Bulova to order 100,000 transistor radios if they sold them under the Bulova brand name. Bulova argued that their brand name was way more powerful than the brand Sony, which nobody had heard of in 1955. They had spent 50 years, after all, building up the Bulova brand. But Akio Morita, Sony's president, asked Bulova, "How many people have heard of your company 50 years ago? My company is just starting out, but 50 years from now, it would be just as famous as yours." And Morita was right. Actually, today Sony is a leading global brand, while Bulova still exists, but just doesn't carry the same weight as it did in the 50s. The takeaway here is that if you're confident in your product and its differentiation, don't sell your brand out. Establish and confidently promote your own brand. If the product catches on, people will gradually come to accept your brand as its own concept. This, by the way, is why I have no interest in selling my Restful brand. We have a unique line of health-focused lighting, and we believe we can grow it into its own given the right time and persistence. So that's all I've got today on Ralph Lauren. I didn't know much about his story until this week when I listened to David Senra's excellent Founders podcasts. But now I classify Ralph Lauren, along with other product leaders like Tony Fadell and James Dyson, in the short list of entrepreneurs I truly resonate with. I encourage you to subscribe for more content like this, and also check out the Founders podcast for a treasure trove of entrepreneurial inspiration. I've got a link to the Founders Ralph Lauren episode in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.